Again, we've already seen what JavaScript looks like. Now let's get to building it. Remember, any web page or application consists of three main documents: the HTML that contains content like text and images, CSS to style the HTML, and JavaScript to make it interactive. These documents are hosted on a web server that exposes them to the internet using unique URLs. Then web browsers that are used from client computers can access to these documents to the HTTP or Hypertext Transfer Protocol. For software development teams, you just need to worry about creating the documents and putting them on the web server. Once the documents are on the client's machine, the web browser interprets them and styles the HTML with CSS, then loads the JavaScript to be executed. The web browsers are the main ingredients that actually runs the code that is written in your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript documents. That's why when testing web applications, regardless of doing it manually or applying automation, you need to verify them on multiple browsers such as Chrome or Firefox, or in other words, cross-browser testing. Okay, back to JavaScript. Just like with HTML and CSS, there are several ways to develop JavaScript. The first one is to write it from scratch. And just like HTML and CSS, you can write JavaScript from scratch using simple text editors like Sublime Text or Notepad. You also have the option to use more advanced tools to provide you with more guidance and error checking, like integrated development environments or IDEs. There are a lot of IDEs that you can use for writing JavaScript, like VS Code, WebStorm, Eclipse, and many more. Let's do an example in Sublime Text and VS Code. And here I'm developing a simple JavaScript file. You can see that after selecting the file type JavaScript, it recognizes that I'm in a JavaScript file. So when I start writing, Sublime Text will suggest based on what I'm typing. The same on VS Code, an IDE. It also assists you with suggestions. This is one of the many things that an integrated development environment can do for you. But you can see on VS Code, you can go to the definition or implementation of a function by right-clicking on it. Then click on the corresponding menu item. This is something simple text editors cannot do. If you prefer something else or just simply want to explore your horizons, using libraries and frameworks would also be possible. Just like there are CSS libraries that provide pre-made styles for you, there are JavaScript libraries that provide pre-made JavaScript functionalities for you, like Angular. Unfortunately, while these libraries can help improve productivity in some way, they also introduce the risk that a library might contain bugs or security flaws as they have been created by somebody else. Therefore, it will be best to swap between different libraries to see which one works better. I'll use Angular in this case, which is also in the latest version. Here on the left, I have some HTML. There's no JavaScript here, but just some text that isn't part of the HTML standard. I'll use Angular in this case, which is also in the latest version. Here on the left, I have some HTML. There's no JavaScript here, but just some text that isn't part of the HTML standard, and a link to the Angular library. You can see the weird HTML attributes here, and also on the text input element right here to help Angular recognize that this is an Angular app and take the input data into its model. From this, I can now perform data binding, or synchronizing the text of this paragraph element to the data in the name model of Angular, which comes from the text box. This subsequently results in this behavior. When I enter the text catalog in the text box, it immediately shows up in the paragraph as I type it out. Having loaded in the browser, Angular has actually done this for me, but I wouldn't be able to see it. With a functionality like this, it would require great effort and time to put out and write a large amount of JavaScript. With Angular's library, it would bring a lot of support and help you speed up development. However, using these libraries would ask for additional time of learning how to use them and how they work. In the previous example, you'd have to know the capabilities of those HTML attributes. That's it. Now you know what JavaScript is and how to work with it. Let's go over the things to remember from this chapter. JavaScript is a high-level programming language that enables interactivity from a web and holding everything together. From interacting with HTML to browsers, all the way to creating pop-ups and other actions that the web browser can access. You could also use it to communicate with other systems, like APIs on other servers. As JavaScript is just text, similar to HTML and CSS, you have the option to write it in text editors or using the IDE, or even use pre-made packages from a library like jQuery or Angular.